Welcome. This is the Power Podcasters podcast Google Hangout. I'm Scott Paton, Dean of Blogonomics and Podology. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm very, very excited. I have a super special guest that I know you're going to love. He's a film director, online publisher, and fellow Udemy instructor. And he's been known internationally as a documentary film director with more than 40 productions to his credit. These films have been shown all over the world and in many of the major television channels, BBC, PBS, Arte, etc. The subjects have ranged from heavy-duty investigations into conflict areas, like where the drone attacks were in Iraq, and they've also been lighthearted portraits of contemporary celebrities. Achieving these films has meant mastering filmmaking in all its aspects, storytelling, journalism, and writing. And then, of course, he's had to pitch and present, these ideas to the people that make the decisions and pay the checks. And as the world of filmmaking and communication, obviously the internet and the speed with which we have things happening now, he's become personally involved in online publishing and marketing as well. And we've had some very, very interesting discussions about course creation, storytelling, authenticity, creating momentum, and all these sort of different things. And I was just so excited when he agreed to come on and join us. So welcome, Paul Jenkins.
Thanks, Scott. Pleasure to be here. And isn't it marvelous that we can do this?
It absolutely is. I'm just outside of Vancouver, Canada, and you are...
Well, I'm in Paris, and actually I'm going to show your audience here. This is what, it's right out the window. This is the Paris rooftops, right? This is the view out of this little corner of my Paris apartment that I'm sitting in right now. This has become my kind of podcasting and video creation corner, actually, Scott. It's my lo-fi corner to the world. and actually, behind me is Stanley Kubrick, who clearly is he's the man, right? I mean, he's the inspiration. So I kind of surround myself with the Paris rooftops, Kubrick behind me, a couple of plants that probably need a bit more water, and a white wall. So there you go.
How long have you been in Paris?
7 years. I moved here in 2007. After having basically lived and worked in Britain for 20-odd years. I was in London for a very, very, very long time. And then the French-German public television network Arte started to offer quite serious films, feature-length documentary films. So I thought, okay, let's try that. Let's just see how that system works and explore it. Didn't intend to stay in Paris very long, to be honest with you, and I've ended up staying here 7 years, which is maybe the 7-year itch now. But it's very interesting because the French culture in terms of filmmaking and writing and so forth is different from the Anglo-Saxon culture. And so in terms of learning how they construct films, what's important inside the way the French think about a film and the way they pitch a film, the way they construct a film, the way they write a film, the way they put a film together and so forth. There's stuff you can actually learn there as a filmmaker, which I probably wouldn't have known if I hadn't have come here. So,
right. So that brings up an interesting point because, of course, my focus and our focus is going to be on how all of this applies to podcasting. And so as you were talking, what I was thinking was the audience, obviously, in France is used to this. And so you're communicating to, so what I hear you saying, so correct me if I'm wrong, is the way the filmmaker connects to and communicates to the French audience is different than an English filmmaker or an American filmmaker.
Well, actually, the films I'm making are going out to international audiences by and large. So typically...
But I'm talking about the ones that the French filmmakers are making.
Yeah, well, true. And to be honest, I haven't really connected to the national level stuff so much. So I wouldn't say that I would be, say, the best person to speak to about how it works for the local national market. Though my impression is that first-person narrative films work particularly well here. I mean, there's a lot of very personally based views, personally based opinion seems to be very important in the French documentary tradition. I remember getting into hot water actually in a film festival in Brussels a few years ago, where we'd made a film about the Srebrenica massacre in Bosnia, And being rather young, green, and wet behind the ears, I stood up and I said something along the lines of, well, we're very happy to have made this objective film. And I, I could see the kind of looks of horror appear in the eyes of the audience, who obviously were thinking, what does this young fella talk about when he's talking about objectivity in filmmaking? But of course, there's a sense in which they were right, and there's a sense in which I was right. Of course,
Yes.
Every camera angle, every sound choice, every editing choice is a subjective decision. Therefore, the emotional tenor of the film, blam blam blam, is going to be strongly influenced by the hand of the artist. But that said, there's a line. I think there's a line beyond which films become navel-gazing and not actually about the subject of the film, and that I think can be a point of perhaps friction or difference. So I'm not quite sure what the word would be, but between, if you like, the Anglo-Saxon and the Latin cultures of filmmaking. So it's a slightly different, and I think it expresses itself even in street culture actually. But it is a different approach. But it's certainly one more driven by the power of the written word here. I find myself cranking out more words per inch when putting a film proposal here together than I ever did in the Anglo-Saxon world. Frankly, in the Anglo-Saxon world, if you have a strong film idea, you might put it down in one paragraph. I mean, it's the back of the envelope idea, and you have perhaps a 10-point structure for a documentary film. Here in France, they would never go for that in a million years. You have to churn out several pieces of paper that explain your idea in detail and your intention for the film and so on and so forth. And then actually at the stage that you're constructing the film, far more written work goes in prior to actually making the film. So there's two very different traditions there, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the same when you're talking about podcasting. When people say, well, what type of podcast should I make? And there's just this huge, long spectrum, and it's kind of like whatever you want to do, you're the executive producer, and certainly there are things that work better than other things. But having said that, even the things that don't work well, there's going to be somebody that is hugely successful using it. So I find myself always in this conundrum, because I actually just talked to a fellow who's what I would call a local podcaster, and if you had asked me if someone could do what he's doing in podcasting and be successful, I would have bluntly said not a hope. And because how can a local dentist have a podcast? And he does. He sets up local dentists with podcasts, and they're hugely successful. But they're incredibly focused, and they're incredibly, aimed very, very narrowly at his patients, not in terms of necessarily a patient in lead generation type of thing, but in terms of retention and time saving for the dentist.
I think there should be kind of the groundhog theory of podcasting, or the groundhog theory of online broadcasting, actually, Scott, which is that how in Groundhog Day, the movie, how to start with people irritate him, and then finally actually they grow as a community, and they actually end up liking and loving each other. But,
yes.
It's kind of like that in a way. I mean, I think that the beauty of online broadcasting, podcasting, whatever one is doing in the online space, is that frankly you can be completely experimental. This is like going back to the good old bad old days of public television in the kind of 1970s and 1980s, where there was all sorts of wonderful genre creation and all sorts of wonderful spirit actually inside, and experimentation, some of which of course failed miserably, but some of which was spectacularly fantastic. And that is basically, it seems to me, to do with the human spirit. It's to do with your inner conviction. It's to do with basically having fun. Actually, if you're not having fun doing what you're broadcasting, why the hell are you doing it?
Right.
So
we've created this environment where we've been able to unleash that creativity. Right? It's not like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, where BBC has $5 million worth of studio equipment that you need to use. Now we have these little phones that take great pictures and videos, and we're able to communicate, 10,000 miles or whatever our distance is, and when someone watches this later, the quality of the video, I'm always amazed when I'm editing and when I watch these Hangouts, just how clear I am, how clear the other person is, how good the audio is. And so we've been able to kind of get to this point where we've been able to unleash all of this creativity, and we're seeing amazing things being created.
You know, and the technology just gets better and better, and, you know, hey, in 3-5 years' time, we'll have a holographic projection of a video podcast, or God alone knows, but, you know, it's going to be quite extraordinary how the technology is coming on. And so actually, it seems to me that the thing to work on, in a way, because it's quite easy to get caught up in the, you know, all the technology choices and, you know, all the kind of technical aspects of podcasting or video broadcasting or whatever it is. But actually, the thing that's worth working on is the branding thing. You know, it's basically, you know, who am I? What do I want to project? How am I going to project it? What are the modalities? Sorry, kind of United Nations style word creeping in there, but what are the modalities? I must have been in France for too long. What are the modalities of you know, communicating across what I want to communicate across? And how much am I going to use stories in that mix? What kind of stories I'm going to teach and all the rest of it, or tell? And so, you know, actually, if there's something to work on, it's actually that energy of communication. You know, that's the thing that actually you have that's going to really give value. And so all the associated technologies are simply going to, you know, we know that in, you know, 3-5 years time, the audio is going to be pretty much as damn it perfect, right? I mean, you know, the broadband audio quality will just be amazing in 3 to 5 years time. They'll have
3D video recording, I'm sure, right? Yeah. And I think you bring up a really good point, is because what we really have as well, and we're just going to focus on maybe the podcasting aspect of it, as podcasters, is we have a message that we want to get out. We have a movement, or we want to move the audience from here to there. And one of the things that we've discussed a few times, Paul, is, you know, being authentic. And I think this is really a good time to kind of jump into that, right? Like, how, you know, how do you be authentic? Like, you either are or you aren't, I guess. But, you know, this whole idea of really being authentic, like you talked about the brand, and what that means to me is, you know, here I am, this is who I am, and as you're walking by the door, I have it open, and some people are going to come on in and party or sit down and have an interesting conversation with me, and some people are going to walk on by, and we really want those people that are part of our community to come in. And to me, that's part of the power of podcasting, is that community can be worldwide. But let's talk a little bit about authenticity.
You know, I'm gonna say something that's way out there. Okay, I've been advised by a mentor to wake up in the mornings stretching and smiling, and then I do a few little jumps in front of a mirror to start the day. Okay, I'm absolutely serious. Yeah. I quite literally have my, you know, dressing gown or whatever, stand in front of a mirror and do a few jumps with a smile on my face to start the day. Okay, and you might think I'm absolutely crazy to start my day that way, but anyway, it works for me. But the kind of the point is that on the authenticity scale, I think it's crucial to fine-tune one's own BS detector. Okay, you've got to like really have a finely calibrated kind of, you know, internal BS detector, not just for the BS out there, but actually for the BS that you might be putting out there. Because if you don't have that detector, you'll rabbit and warble on, and you could be putting out all sorts of awful stuff, and actually never understand that you're putting out awful stuff. And so actually, the capacity to laugh at yourself and to look at the mirror and actually look accurately at what's in the mirror, if you see what I mean. And the actually listening back to, quite often when I do a podcast interview, well, an interview like this, for example, I'll often listen back to, say, 10 or 15 minutes of it fairly shortly afterwards, just to actually understand, yeah, how am I coming across? Yeah, I think that's really important, actually. And of course, to show it to some trusted friends and family and so forth, just a few minutes. Don't want to bore the teeth out of them, but, you know, to get that feedback is incredibly important, because that is your coin in this game. Your coin is absolutely the way that people connect to you and the way you're connecting out to them.
I totally agree. I say that doing podcasting or video, like YouTube videos or whatever, whenever you're in front of a camera and you're speaking, it's an amazing personal development journey if you're willing to go back and look, because all of a sudden you see yourself, because we never see ourselves, right? I mean, it's always kind of out this way, unless we're looking in a mirror, which is why what you're doing in the morning is so brilliant. And most people, I won't say that. A lot of people that I've talked to hate the sound of their voice. They hate looking at themselves on film. I still have a hard time watching me in Hangouts. I'm getting better and better at it. But part of that, I think, is because I'm going to see myself unfiltered, because this is the way the video is, right? And if I look at that and I say, okay, well, that's interesting, you know, my hair is really, you know, it needs, you know, bad, or my glasses are bad, or I should have shaved, or this is not the right shirt, then I can say, well, I've learned something. Next time, don't wear plaid, or next time, put in contacts, or next time, you know, shave, or whatever it is. And I've noticed that a lot in the audio part. I did a podcast with with a really good friend of mine, and we said right after every sentence. So, Paul, you're in Paris, right? And you're a filmmaker, right? And we had, and I think what happened was we reinforced each other on the right. And then one day he listens and he says, listen to this, and he plays it, and it was like every 10th word was right. I said, oh, well, now we knew. So then it became a joke, right? Right? Because every time we said it, the other person would laugh, and we caught each other, and it went lower and lower, and it changed. So, of course, our presentations definitely improved because we weren't doing that. I've noticed with the people that I'm working with now, so is like blah, 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 so, blah, 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 so, blah, 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 so, and it's like a filler word. We seem to have a real problem with silence. And it's funny because as I'm filming, they'll be talking away and they'll go, so, oh no, can't say that, just a second. And there's this kind of, you can see this gears changing in their head as so becomes less and less and less used. So it's really interesting because it improves the communication when you can get that feedback, and it's brutal feedback because it's absolutely true. And then you're open to the feedback. I think that's where the authenticity comes from, right? Show the film to your family and not have them fearful of saying, well, that's not really very good.
Yeah, you know, the Hollywood actors of the 1920s and certainly beyond, they knew exactly where to stand in the light to have the best look. They knew which side of their face and even which angle of light should hit their face in order to look best on camera. And you know, you can play a lot of tricks with camera angle, for example, which can give different feelings inside a shot, and you can certainly work on. It's almost like a kind of internal sound editing. Politicians who I've interviewed, for example, you can see them processing. They're processing the sound bites before they deliver the answer, because they know exactly how that will be cut into the news for the evening, for example. Honestly, though, I think that the true masters of this go a step beyond, and they're characterized by simplicity. You know, if you watch an interview with the Dalai Lama, if you watch an interview with, for example, God, I don't know, so any of the very, very top and confident business people, Branson, for example, is a good example. If you watch an interview with, this is why interviews are worth watching, actually, because or Jim Carrey actually is wonderful at it. I mean, Jim Carrey is just so spontaneous and natural. Actually, these people, they go beyond the design, and what characterizes them is that they're speaking from the heart, you know, and this is the thing that's the connection to try to get. You know, I've read advice, for example, with a webcam lens, that you can treat the webcam lens as the eye of the person you're talking with, so that you're not communicating beyond the laptop, if you see what I mean. You're
Right.
actually communicating with the lens of the laptop as the eye of the receiver, if you like, and that this actually impresses. That certainly works, right? But I think there's something, and again, this may sound a bit way out there and kind of West Coasty, and here I am sitting in Paris.
I'm on the West Coast, so that's good.
You're on the West Coast. You're on the Northwest Coast. So but if you're making that connection between your heart and that webcam lens, that's a very, very different connection, because then you are caring about your audience. You're caring about their welfare, and that's a very, very different proposition to an informational proposition. Frank Kern, for example, I saw a great webcast by him a few weeks ago. Frank Kern, the
Yes.
internet marketer. I mean, he's kind of one of the, and I think the word guru is much overused, but I would say he's a guru.
And he also does what you talked about in terms of going beyond the design. Like some of the stuff he put out, when he put out, it was like, are you nuts? Like, why
he always breaks out. He's characterized by someone who constantly plays with the form, which again is the mark of someone with, confidence, integrity, and someone who actually wants to kind of really punch through. But he said that what matters for audiences these days is not information, it's insights. And that really stuck in my mind, because when you share an insight with someone, you're sharing something that is truly valuable. It can actually enable a step change in someone's performance or someone's business and someone's life that is way beyond simply delivering a whole packet of information, right? And so I feel there's something in that area which is very, very interesting for people who've got something to share, and people who have a message to put out there to try to connect those two things. Perhaps it's that emotional authenticity, and certainly film and television and video. It doesn't take prisoners when it comes to emotional authenticity. I mean, you feel what you get,
Yes.
if you're half awake, and so I don't know. So that emotional authenticity is extremely important. But then the capacity and the willingness to share insights, I think, is extremely important. And that's where the kind of the bravery comes in, because you actually have to be prepared to put your neck on the block to share stuff out there that may be experimental, it may be wrong, but you're developing through the process of communication. And podcasting, filmmaking, feature filmmaking, drama series, YouTube videos, webcasts, I don't care. It's all the same thing. It's communication, and that's at the absolute heart of it. It seems to me.
Yeah, I think you just made a big difference in how I look at things moving forward in terms of using that word insights. And one of the things that kind of came up was it's really true in my opinion. You have an opinion, you have an insight on something, and it's quite possible that other people will have diametrically opposed position or insight or experience. And I had an experience like that on Facebook, actually. I had seen I like coconut oil, okay? And so I had seen this article on coconut oil, and I just thought, clicked share on the article, and it went up on my page, and then somebody saw it, and they shared it, and went up on their page, and of course Facebook lets you know, and all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, there's all these comments on this other person's Facebook page about my article that I shared. And the first one was the person said, wow, this is really interesting, and then the next person said, this is basically BS, and I've read this book and that book and this book, and this doctor says no oils at all. And I'm kind of like, well, I need to sort of, respond a little bit to this because it seems diametrically opposed to what I think, right? So I did. And then the original person said, I don't want to get into all the details, but basically said, I don't buy it, right? And I said, this is an interesting conversation, right? And so then my response was 8 points. And so it was basically, there was no, you're wrong, there was no, you're an idiot, there was none of that. It was all really calm, I guess would be the best way to put it. And one of them was, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just sharing, and you're an intelligent person, totally up to you to make up your mind, which was one of my 8 points. And she was, and it's calmed everybody down, first of all, and then she said, well, okay, I'll look into this a little bit more or something. Because one of them was, have an open mind. If this is something that's important to you, then I think you need to, check it all out and decide. But I just thought that whole, when you put something out there, we live in a place where everybody can hide behind a computer screen, and we hear about it all the time, about online bullying or people just, trolling or saying nasty things. So I think you have to have that, if you're going to be authentic, oh dear, you have to also say, not everybody's going to agree with me, that's okay, because I only want to attract a certain type of person. I like to attract everybody, but that's really not going to happen, and it's not reasonable to expect it.
I get probably about 300 to 400 emails hitting my inbox every day, and out of those 300 to 400, because I'm on all sorts of lists, out of those 300 to 400, maybe about 3 to 4 actually truly catch my attention, and because I use email marketing as one of my marketing methods, if you like, I've actually started to seriously ask myself, well, what exactly is it that actually pulls me in towards that? It's it seems to me you don't want to be standing on the rooftops and shouting for attention. Everyone does that. What you want to be doing is down there in the highway, and you know how some people have got that little placard they're just holding up, by the road, and actually it does catch your attention, and it does suck you in, and you gravitate towards it, and you pay it attention. I believe it's called Mindshare. Now, I'm not quite sure where the concept of Mindshare originated. It may originate out of kind of some of the spookier corners of government. I'm not sure, but there's this idea of Mindshare that everyone has this 100. You have this 100% Mindshare, and if you're actually taking a little piece of that Mindshare in your communications, that's a massive victory. And for me, out of those 300 to 400 emails, those 3 or 4 emails that catch my attention, they're the part of they're the Mindshare that I've given over there, and so it seems to me that, and my conclusion so far at least, is the ones that are really catching my attention are the people who actually really seriously care about what they're putting out there. They care about it because they know it's true. They know it has huge value. They know it has, they know it can help people. They know that they're targeting as well, of course. But basically, it's to do with the authenticity of the value proposition. God, I sound like a marketer now, but it really is about am I putting something out there that actually really has value, that I really do believe that can help you, or am I just trying to flog you something? And if the answer is the second, basically my call to action to your audience would be stop doing it right now, because actually all you're doing is degrading your brand, you're degrading your communication with every single communication you're putting out, if that's basically what's going on. But if what's going on is that you've actually found things that you genuinely, you see them and you think, wow, that really is cool, ask yourself, well, why do I think it's cool, and examine that, zero in on that, if you like, because that's the point of insight, that's the point of discovery, and that's the point that if you actually communicate that point out in an authentic way with your audience, then they're going to feel it. I mean, I've been making documentary films all over the world for 20-odd years, and I can tell you one thing, which is that in documentary filmmaking and in people who take part in a documentary film, as a filmmaker and certainly as an audience, you absolutely feel when someone is being authentic and genuine with you, and you can similarly feel when someone is actually masking something, or they're kind of trying to cover something up, or whatever it is. It's just incredible how that comes across in film and video, certainly, but I think even in for example, pure audio, I mean, in a radio broadcast, I still think you can actually pick up a huge. The human mind is incredibly powerful at discerning information. The mind has been built through thousands of years of evolution and survival to basically pick up on really quite small indicators to understand how to orientate with something. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And there's ways of manipulating that, of course, and we could go into that. But essentially, what it boils down to is that at least I think if you're building something out that's a business and not simply playing with it, then actually the way you communicate and what you're communicating, the passion of your communication, and the genuine value in your communication, those are absolutely central to what you should be thinking about and doing every day. Honestly, that's how I see it. And
yeah, I would totally agree with you, Paul. I think that one of the things that excites me about podcasting, and you could lump YouTube and all those other things into it, is the ability that we have to take our message, to take what it is that we really feel strongly about, and share it with the world in the ways that we couldn't do, 20 years ago, for example. To me, that's really, really exciting. And yeah, so this whole discussion of authenticity, I think, is really, really important. And
I think messaging is also, sorry to cut across, I think that messaging is also, the real masters of messaging, or the real masters of communication, are strategic about the outcomes of the messaging as well. And those outcomes are usually not short-term outcomes. They're normally thinking quite a bit further ahead. It's like and so, okay, of course, you might want to be trying to sell X number of products or these products in the next time frame, for example, and in whatever way you're associative messaging those product sales. But I think it's worth sitting back sometimes and thinking, okay, what is the message I would like to basically have received and understood and engaged with in 3 to 5 years from now? And if your messaging is consistent within that, within a strategy, then I think you've really got something going, because it means that the timbre and the tenor of all of your messaging will be cohesive. It's kind of this is a chess game, actually. It's not a we're not just moving an individual piece and then we move on to moving the next individual piece. That way you don't win chess, right? You've got to have you've got to fit your messaging and your communication within a vision, within a strategy. It seems to me.
That is a huge, huge insight, because one of the things that I say in my course, Power Podcasters, is podcasts are permanent. Lecture 7. No, I don't know what lecture number it is. But I had an experience where I had taught a friend of mine, Everett, how to podcast, and he put up this podcast, and I don't know how many episodes that he did, and he stopped. And then for whatever reason, 2 years later, he was fiddling around, and he came across the podcast page, and he said, I just wonder what's going on. And he looked at the stats. He'd had 10,000 downloads. And he went, oh my, and I stopped. Like, where would I be 2 years later if I had kept going? It's like you're halfway through the chess game and you get up and leave. You're never gonna win, right? And so the thing, I think you're absolutely right. One of the differences between like email marketing and podcasting, in my opinion, is when you do the podcast, it sits on iTunes forever, which means that 5 years from now, someone's going to be wandering around iTunes, see your show, click on it, listen to it, and it's like the first thing they've ever heard. And there's going to be people that listen to you there are people that listen to me 10 years ago on the very worst podcast episode I ever did, because they tell me about it, and they listen to me now, and it's just like they feel like I'm their best friend, which is kind of what happens when you combine the visual and the video and the audio and
yeah, it's the groundhog effect kicking in. I used to shoot, or I still do actually shoot. I do archery. Okay, and in the British target archery tradition, you shoot in a competition. You shoot 144 arrows over a period of several hours, and this can be at distances up to 90 meters. Up to we call it 100 yards in English, but it's very, very difficult, because what you're talking about is hitting a target, hitting the goal, which might be this kind of size, at a range of 90 meters with an Olympic bow. And the point is that to achieve any kind of success in that, you have to use visualization. It's really crucial because if you mess up a shot, psychologically, you start to unwind so fast that the following shot is going to be a disaster, and you'll even miss the target. And so it's very, very important to refocus each shot. Prior to taking the shot, you visualize the outcome of the shot such that you don't even aim the arrow. You simply, your mind knows when to release the arrow, and all of that may be coming across as a bit zen, and again a bit kind of West Coast hippie trippy. I'm not sure, but the point is that if you're fitting your messaging within a cohesive strategy, okay, and you're kicking into each performance, which is what a podcast is at the end of the day. It is a performance, then a little bit of visualization of the show prior to actually delivering the show probably will have huge results. I mean, actors certainly use this technique all the time, but again, it's that can be helpful, because it's kind of that way. Every time you're putting out a show, you're injecting that energy,
yes,
and that visualized energy into what you're doing.
I actually had a chat with another podcaster about this very thing. It was like, how do you prepare, right? And what I normally do is I go lay on the couch, I put some zen-y meditative music on, and then I just see the result is this was a great experience for my guest, it was a great experience for me, it was a great experience for our listeners, and then and I'm really like calm, and he says, really, you do that? I go, yeah, about 5-10 minutes, because I crank up heavy metal rock as high as I can, and I'm bouncing and jumping all over the room. And then we get together and we do a show together. It was so fun.
That's fantastic.
There, right?
So yeah.
Paul, you said 2,000 to 3,000 interviews, and I know we're kind of getting. I'm hoping that you will agree to do a few more of these, because obviously we're not going to be able to get to the depth or even all the topics that we had talked about wanting to. But I really want to talk about the interviews, because I think that's an easy way for people to create podcasts, in terms of you just ask a question, they answer the question, they're an expert, and nobody kind of there's not a lot of pressure in terms of content, because your guest is an expert on the topic that they're talking about. But what are some of the things when it comes to interviewing that you found has really helped you become a better interviewer?
I guess the first thing is to reflect on the single thing that person can deliver in this interview. Audiences don't take away all of the points inside an interview. I mean, if you were to ask most people at the end of an interview, well, what did you actually remember of that interview? What struck you? What jumped out at you? I pretty much guarantee you they'll be able to tell you the first and last answer, and they may have something somewhere in the middle that has particularly jumped out, unless they're very expert listeners, or very expert, unless they've done training basically. Because most people, they're not listening to something in order to absorb every single point. They're listening to the river is running through, if you like, and the few things that stick out are going to be the ones that actually stick in the mind. So when you're actually thinking about an interview or constructing an interview, I would go into that reflective phase where I think, well, okay, actually, who really is this person, and what do they really have to share with me right now, and share with the audience, or share inside this film, for example. And that's really, really important, because if you can then effectively circle around that key point in your line of questioning and your follow-up questioning and everything else, that's actually going to be massively helpful, because in effect what you're doing is you're building around the central. In documentary filmmaking, it's called the controlling idea. Every documentary film has a controlling central idea inside the film that is being communicated in one way or another through at the end of the film. And each interview, in a way, has a controlling idea. There'll be something inside that interview that's been really central to the interview. And so perhaps rather than running in 100 different directions, think to yourself, well, actually, what is the central thing I really want to nail with this interview? Okay, there might be some other stuff that comes up and whatever, but at least, and then go with that. And be very, very alert to to what someone's saying to you, because you may have to swap out your plan quite rapidly, and you may realize, well, actually, hang on a second, that is the central thing inside this interview that is actually really massively important. Rip up the script, chuck away the questions, and spend the whole interview on that. Because, you know, if you are finding yourself drawn into that, then there's probably a very good reason, and it's probably worth, you know, and it's unlikely that it's your one-shot deal. The chances are you'll be able, you know, if the interview goes really well, the interviewee is really happy, they'll be more than happy to come back for another show. So you can develop your 10-point interview structure has just become 10 planned out interviews with that interviewee over the next, say, couple of years or whatever. You know, there are many ways to string a cat, right? And so I would say that is actually very, very important. I mean, the obvious stuff, like, you know, asking open questions, not closed questions, and it's about basically drawing out stories. So formulations like, for example, tell me about is an incredibly useful formulation because it invites a story, you know, and storytelling, of course, is hardwired into our psyche as a way to really engage with a point.
So let me ask you this. Tell us about one of your favorite interviews.
Well, one of my favorite interviews. Okay, so on-camera interviews. Let's go with that one.
Sure.
Okay, I'll talk about one from a film I made. It was one of the first films I made. It's a film called Soldat. It's about the Russian army, and we spent 8 months filming a Russian army unit near Chechnya, and spent 3 months setting up the access to an ordinary Russian army unit. So it was unprecedented access, never happened before, will never happen again, and we were there and we made the film. And basically, it was a whole bunch of Russian conscripts. You know, I mean, these kids had, you know, basically been pretty much press ganged into the military with for the most part, and were serving 2 years and two years inside the army. And I caught up with these guys towards the end of the process to ask them a series of interviews based on the 160 hours of observational material that I'd actually looked at of their lives inside the barracks, how they were interacting. I'd already started to structure out the film in my own mind. And I remember interviewing this kind of big Russian kid, you know, and I'd seen him, there's a wonderful scene inside the film which perfectly sort of explains old culture and modern culture, the old Soviet Union and Yeltsin's Russia as it was at the time, and so on and so forth, where there's a case of kind of indiscipline inside the barracks, and the major, who looked a bit like a kind of mouse with a funny mousy moustache, and, you know, you could see he'd basically been driven mad by all of the changes of modern Russia, was trying to control the soldiers, which, of course, as an officer is a huge mistake anyway. You must never do that. You allow other people to control them. You never, ever, ever get stuck in that. But anyway, he found himself literally trying, you know, 30 of these conscripts in front of him, trying to basically control, you know, the indiscipline. And Sasha, which is this kid's name, is in the front rank, and he can't control himself. He's cracking up. You know, he's laughing, and the more the officer starts to scream and shout and control him, of course, the more he's collapsing and giggles. And then he starts making him do press-ups, and of course, he's collapsing with laughter whilst trying to do the press-ups and everything else. I mean, and the scene finishes with the officer basically giving up, leaving the barrack room, getting onto what looked like a child's bicycle and cycling off into the snow. And so the scene is just quite incredible, actually. But so I interviewed Sasha, and I refer to this instant, and I remember that, you know, he went into pure poetry. He just said, you know, because he explained the thing, and he was very empathetic actually towards the officer and everything else. So you know, he's a, you know, a mature, lovely lad, but he sort of said, the past is like a great big rock that for some people simply can't be moved, you know. And he went off, and I just went, wow, you know, this is not what I expected from him or from the situation, or, you know. And it was just he just nailed it, because he'd not only understood the sense of what he'd been involved in, but he actually understood the sense of the whole enterprise, and that was a great. I don't. There've been so many, Scott. I hesitate to answer it.
That's a beautiful one.
But that one certainly sticks in my mind, because it unleashes the poetry of the human condition.
That's wonderful. That's great. You've got a number of courses on Udemy. We're sort of running out of time, and I want to make sure that I give you a chance to talk a little bit about them. I've taken your Director Secrets course. Love it. It's highly recommended. I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm also really we've talked a bit about pushing the boundaries and everything else, and this is a course that you had, we'll say, complete, except that you had an idea of expanding it dramatically beyond where this completion was, and you were very open about that in terms of how you were structuring the course, and it was structured in quite a bit different way than you normally do as well, as I recall you saying. And so it was interesting, because here you are being avant-garde with the Udemy course as opposed to a documentary, which was really, really cool. And I learned a lot in terms of structuring shoots and the way that you were looking at the lighting and all those things. It really shortcut my experience and learning in those areas, which I really appreciate. And I thought maybe I'd just get you to talk a little bit about that. I know you've given us a coupon for it. I'm going to have it in the description below, which was very generous of you. But tell us a little bit about being a great director.
Well, actually, with that course, I was slightly terrified about how that course would turn out, but I thought, okay, damn it, I'll just do it anyway. And I was sitting here one day thinking, okay, you know what, I'm bored. I want to just get out with the camera and play with it, And so I went down to a park, and I thought, okay, I can start just teaching how I see shots and why I would shoot shots in a certain sequence and using certain angles, how I think about light, and how the practicalities of getting a decent material together for a little film actually work out. And so, rather than trying to construct a course, I think sometimes there is a kind of avant-garde genre of course making, which is this it's almost like fly on the wall observational course making. It's sort of come with me and share this period of time with me. If I was, for example, trying to learn something for someone who truly has mastered a topic, or someone who really feels for something, I might be happy just to spend half a day or a day in that person's company, observing how they're doing things, and with a kind of running commentary. It's not a super structured, a super tight, if you like, series of punchy lessons. It's actually more, okay, just share this time with me, and as though you're over my shoulder, you're seeing how I'm doing things, I'm going to talk you through it, and learn with me that way. That basically was the idea. And I have to admit, until yesterday, I had absolutely no idea how that method was really working. But Udemy have just introduced statistics, and very detailed engagement statistics that allow you to actually see exactly how much of a particular lesson have all the students followed, what percentage who started that have completed what percentage of the lecture. It allows you to also see the feedback. What percentage feel that the course still needs more improvement, what percentage are very satisfied with the course, etc. It gives it all. They've broken it down in a very, very detailed way, and I was very happy to see that actually in that particular course it had worked. Actually the students fed back 94% positive. That's something like 95% of the people starting lessons had gone through the lesson, and that all the lessons had been watched through by quite a lot of people. I was genuinely surprised by that, to be honest with you, because I had a feeling that people might just be wanting to come in for kind of burst transmission courses where everything is done very, very quickly. But actually the way of being able to simply say, imagine to myself, well, okay, look, if you was really sort of hanging around with me and coming through this process with me, how would you learn this? inside that course, I've actually done a hybrid, because I've done the directing side is this kind of, avant-garde stuff and communicates how to direct in that way. The editing side of the course, I found I did have to structure more, or I am structuring more, because you just have to learn the editing techniques in a certain way to then be able to apply those into the actual editing practice, which I'm gonna be doing in the course. So. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's. I guess that's the kind of the background to it. The idea, I suppose, would be to compress what I've learned about directing and filmmaking into one course and give the guts of it. It's the unexpurgated kind of truth about how directors see, certainly documentary directors see the world around them, and how they construct things together. And it's probably a million miles away from what you would read in most, for example, textbooks about documentary directing or what have you, where there's all the kind of classic techniques, but actually, honestly, the reality of directing on the ground is very often that you simply don't implement all of those classic techniques. You're aware of them, you know what they are, but very often you're just grabbing a hold of the guts of something and making sure that you've got 80% of the value of a particular opportunity, a filming opportunity or whatever it is, in the can. I mean, and that, at the end of the day, that's what matters, and being able to take that then into a successful edit and construct a successful film. So it's so actually what people are getting through that course is they're getting the real deal, actually, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking, you're absolutely right. Like, as I'm watching you and everything else, I do feel like I'm right over your shoulder. And also, I mean, as you were talking about it, I thought, if you were just telling me, like right now, with the right background, this is what you do, would have made no sense, right? Because I would have no reference. But we're in a park, you're saying, look, you see those people over there, the kids playing, oh, here's a duck walking along, you see how the light here, and if I take this picture, this is really bad, but if I walk over here, take it this way, look how good it is. And so you have that compare and that contrast, and you've got the eye, you've got 20, 30 years experience doing this. I don't have the eye. And then it's like, oh, really cool. And actually I did a series of shots with a shaman, and he came over here, and I could have done it in front of Superman, and I thought, no, I have this beautiful river. So we went over and we found this little island with the water on both sides, and he got out his pipe, and I did some close-up shots, and then I went way away and I did some long shots, and I'm thinking of you as I'm doing looking this way, looking that way, like this right here. It was amazing. So huge difference. Yeah.
So that's that one. The directing course. I suppose what it's trying to teach also is that good directing is about spotting the targets of opportunity. And I think that's as much true in documentary directing as it can also be true in actually even in drama directing, because even in drama, where you think, okay, it's all scripted out and you've done all your storyboarding and you've thought through the shots and the angles and everything else, actually, if you actually read, for example, someone like Tarkovsky, or if you read any of the real master directors, you're gonna see that in fact, they always allow that flexibility to be to have their senses, to have the sensual radar open, basically, to the opportunities of the moment when they're directing. And I mean, Tarkovsky, for example, played very, very much with wind. He was always very alive to, this fabric of the universe touching his actors, And there's a famous story about Tarkovsky. He turned up to film when he made the film The Sacrifice. He arrived at a field with a hut, and it had 1,000 daisies or something inside the field. And Tarkovsky looked at the shot and he said, "No daisies." And they picked out every single goddamn daisy because the scene basically is to do with impending nuclear war, and it just didn't work like this, and you just needed a different look to it, and no, I mean truly. So I guess that's what it's about, playing with the clay of film to mold it, have fun with it, experiment with it, screw it up, please. Make as many mistakes as you can. Take it into an editing deck, play with it, see what works, what doesn't. You understand. I certainly teach some of the principles about directing and what you have to look for and everything else, but it is very much trying to get people past that confidence hump where they're kind of thinking, oh well, I've got to, they kind of stiffen up. Well, the camera's got to point that way, or I've got to do that shot, and you kind of lose it in that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been on Udemy for quite a while, and you made another course, which we've also got a coupon for below. Ultimate Udemy Profits: How to Make Quality Courses Rapidly. So in the last few minutes, tell us a little bit about that course, how you came to create it, and what we can expect from it.
Yeah, actually, the emphasis on the word rapidly, because I would put rapidly in kind of red, 72 points and triple underlined, because the thing about Udemy is an amazing opportunity to make multiple streams of income, and as most successful people will tell you, multiple streams of income is fundamental. I think it's very, very rare to see anyone who's successful online who is only doing one thing and only making one income stream. They're all out there making. And Udemy has an amazing opportunity to build multiple courses, multiple streams of income, find out which ones work, find out which ones don't, and cross-promote the ones that are working. And that's a very, very powerful way to leverage the marketplace. So the next thing up is, well, okay, that's great, but how the hell do I actually put together a course that gets through all the Udemy quality requirements, and people are going to engage, when I get loads of refunds, and where I get nice 4.5 or 5 stars as reviews, blah blah blah, and so I thought, okay, what I'm going to teach in this course is how I do it, which is how to basically structure up, hammer together the courses very, very quickly indeed, but with sufficient technical standards, if you like, so that I don't have to go into loads of post-production. I don't have to go into endless editing and everything else. I knock it out in one take, upload it, done, in the course, and on we move. And that's keeping that momentum and keeping that original inspiration that is up here somewhere, and hammering that through very, very rapidly is incredibly important, I think, to success. Some people are going to hate you for it. They're going to say, "Oh, this is not sufficiently structured or whatever." Forget it. It doesn't matter, because the people your audience are going to engage with those courses and love it. So that's the philosophy behind the Ultimate Udemy Profits. There's a series of techniques I teach in there on how to do it. God, what else to say? I mean, it comes with a 100-page ebook and everything else, and there's a Facebook mastermind group and so forth that we're also building out now to help people through. The truth is, there's something like, God, I mean, there must be 30 or 40 courses up on Udemy about how to do a Udemy course, maybe many, many more. And my advice to anyone listening to this would be, definitely go, if you're serious about trying to use the Udemy platform, do take the time to go out there and buy. Straight off the top of my head, I would say Alan Hill's course. Try and grab that. Sorry, Alan, but try and grab it on discount. I think Jerry Banfield's done one. Who else has stuck up courses? There's a guy called Birchall who's good. You want to look at Dave Espino's course. You should probably take a look at who's the other person I have? I'm leaving people out here. Bob Marks, I believe, has done a course about how to do things very rapidly. So do yourself a favor and kind of educate yourself on the skill set of other instructors as well. By all means, come into my course and have a look at how I do it, and I pull in some of those techniques as well inside my course. But everyone has their own approach, but you can learn from observing people's approaches.
Absolutely, it's definitely going to shortcut your learning curve for that. And one of the reasons I did Power Podcasters was because I wanted to do one course, just me, so that I could go and make all the mistakes and not have to talk to somebody else. And now I've got 4 courses with other instructors, and 3 of them are up and done quick, and 2 of them are done slow, and the 2 that are done slow were the 2 I started first because I did it all wrong, and it was just like, I just wish you get this momentum, and if you don't maintain the momentum and kind of get it sort of complete, then it can be 6 months later and it's still sitting there, which is what's happening with these two courses.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I did that course, actually, Ultimate Udemy Profits, was because I've been sitting in the Udemy studio for quite a long time, observing the discussions going on in the studio, and honestly seeing endless discussions about, procrastination and about, is this right or isn't that right or whatever. And I just thought, honestly, poor people. This is costing you. This is just you're losing it here, because all those weeks and months you're losing the opportunity to start building those income streams. That was one motivation. The other motivation was a friend of mine who I've now coached through to, and she's now put out 3 courses actually within 2 weeks after getting method, and it's been a revolution in her life. I can honestly say that, because she's gone from someone who basically was had spent many months, lost in the jungle, honestly, the online jungle, and I'm very, very happy that somehow I managed to kickstart her into actually becoming a producer, becoming a vendor, and actually literally getting some income coming in every day now. So that was the other motivation for doing the course, actually. So in essence, that's what it does, and I think one important thing about it also is it identifies how to rapidly assess the things you can make courses about that are going to work, and how to spot those niches and basically build those niches out quite rapidly. Yeah. So but the emphasis of the course is rapid. There's no reason why you shouldn't have a Udemy course up by, where are we? We're on a Wednesday. By Wednesday of next week, you could have a Udemy course up. Very, very, very seriously. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so that's Ultimate Udemy Profits, how to make quality courses rapidly. The link is below. Paul's been very generous, giving us a great discount on that. Thank you, Paul. So we've basically come to the end of our time. I want to thank you very much for being so generous with your time, Paul. If you had one tip that you could leave everybody with when it comes to, let's say, filmmaking, video podcasting, what would it be?
Framing. Framing, yeah. The final framing. Okay, basically, how you frame a shot and what the angle of the frame is will convey an emotion to the person. You're representing 3 dimensions and 2 dimensions with every single shot you do. Okay, and so, for example, if a camera angle is slightly above the horizontal, it tends to slightly diminish the subject. For example, you can actually lose some authority that way. It can also contextualize you in the context of everything else you've got, but that can be an issue. If it's slightly under, you can come across as more dominant and therefore more overbearing. So that you also have to be careful with that. So think about the angle in terms of neutrality of emotion, or you could perhaps have it slightly below the horizontal, or experiment with that as a way to slightly build a bit more authority. Secondly, in terms of the composition of the shot, I see a lot of composition out on webcams and so forth where it's kind of, you want to be looking for the eyes around about 1/3 of the way down the frame, because it's a classic compositional technique, that, right? And it works on many levels, but it's a very, very powerful thing to frame things in thirds, and you can do that with your webcam as well.
Okay, so wait. Let's get into this framing, because I'm thinking, all right, I am close to 1/3, I think, on my eyes.
Yeah.
I'm about 1/3 over this way, but I have my camera obviously above me looking down. Now I'm taking the role of the recorder, so maybe being a little bit diminished is good. But what I hear you saying is that I should take my box that I have this on, excuse me, and go more like that.
Exactly.
So
or perhaps that's actually maybe, now you're actually pointing it up slightly. I would drop the camera down slightly. I would actually tilt it down, if that's possible. I'm not sure what your setup is, but yeah, there you go. Bang, done.
Okay,
now,
so let me just talk for a minute so people can see it.
Yeah. Now you see here what you've got is you've got a more neutral, balanced feeling to the shot.
But I cut off the top of my head.
Your head is fully in frame from where I'm looking.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. All right then. Let's go back.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
So there. So
right,
this
so that's
is an improved framing situation.
For me, yes, honestly, and you should ask your audience and just put out a quick survey and ask the guys and gals watching this and say, look, is it better? Is it worse? Yeah, but I can tell you right now.
There'll be comments below, right? So,
yeah.
No, put it back up, Scott.
No, I know. We always like to be looking down at Superman, but actually, honestly, this framing might do you a lot more favors because you're more balanced in terms But you have a nice body position, for example, which is you have your nice neutral body position, slightly leaning forward. I'm breaking the rule because I'm in a relaxed chair in my silly corner here in Paris, but I'm leaning back a bit, which is not ideal. But I should be sort of more forward and all the rest of it. But that's this is relaxed. This is a relaxed thing. But you can lean forwards very slightly to have a little bit more engagement. And probably the other thing I would look at in that setup is I would look a little bit at the iMac immediately behind your head, because a webcam you don't have the depth of focus, therefore you've got this kind of square thing on your head. It may be tricky to move it away, I'm not sure, but you may be able to or you may be able to put you probably wouldn't want to put any kind of drape over it, but you might want to look at dressing the set behind you a little bit just to make it a bit more elegant. That's better already with the way you have it right now, because it's.
My original plan was to put this here and have it something going on it, but there's too much light coming off of it. It overexposes, so I just have it off. Yeah,
but I like the general set behind you because actually it tells a story. You've got the keyboard, the coffee mug, oops, my geology isn't what it should be. The rock, Superman, the giraffe. That's cool actually, because that says something about you and about your interests and about what you're putting. And that's really cool. That's very, very nice.
Actually, I have to talk about Superman. It was a gift at Christmas from my sister and brother-in-law, and it's actually a cookie jar. And I put it up there, and then I did my first hangout, and I thought, oh. Superman's in the background, and I had 3 people say, "Love your Superman," and I thought, "Oh, okay." He stays, right? He stays.
You're in the movie.
I'm in the movie. That's right.
Yeah. But honestly, that for me at least, that's the energy of the framing that you're in now is perhaps better. Yeah. But yeah, see what your audience say.
Cool. Great. Yeah. Well, and I'm really happy about doing this because it gives everybody a real-life example situation where we've talked about, be a third here, be a third here. What is this telling you about yourself that's behind you? Watch out for reflections off of the iMac. I actually did that deliberately so that you could comment about. No, I didn't. I had no idea we were going to talk about this. But I think it's really, really important because, in my opinion, oftentimes nobody pays any attention. And I actually did one lecture where I had a selfie thing. I don't know if I have it. Here it is. And I had my little iPod on the end, and I was filming myself because they had asked me, how did you do this scene in Machu Picchu? So I showed them. But I showed them in my studio room with the green screen, and it's actually an old bedroom. And I wasn't paying attention because I was focused on talking to my iPod. And then when I edited it, I thought, oh, my closet door is open. The places I'm at, what was behind me was fine, except I was showing the whole rest of the room, which wasn't fine.
Yep.
And I was just like, I can't believe I did that. So what's behind you is really, really important. It's part of the story that you're going to be telling, and you need to be aware.
Yeah, and also, webcam doesn't have depth of focus, so you can't have yourself in focus and things behind you out of focus, for example, which is a kind of classic technique, right? But so you've got everything, on a webcam, you have everything in focus and kind of clustered around. So, it is like a composite. It's kind of like a collage almost that you're putting inside the frame. But yeah.
There you go. Great. Thank you, Paul, very much. You've just been a fountain of information. I hope I can have you on the show again. I really, really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your friendship. Thank you.
You're welcome, Scott. Yeah.
And this has been a really exciting episode for me. I hope you've really enjoyed it as well. Down below will be links to the 2 courses. I really strongly recommend that you check them out, buy them, and then you can ask Paul all sorts of questions on his dime, which is also really cool because he does get back to you very quickly. We've had lots of interactions in particularly in the director course that I'm taking with Paul right now. So thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.